realize that how much it affected me, but I tried to get therapy and the therapist was just really bad. So I quit that. I met my husband at that time and we started a courtship and I buried it all. So that was almost 20 years from the time that from the time that that happened until I was going back to graduate school and got triggered. So it was 18 years after my apartment was broken into that I was triggered with PTSD. And I started reading about that too and learned that it's pretty typical um, for rape victims to not pursue therapy for 8 to 10 years.
What was your idea of therapy before that?
Um,
Did you?
it was funny. I don't think I was quite sure because I was in a program to be a school counselor, but right away we were talking about school counselors do a lot of counseling and working therapeutically with students. And so we were talking about that and just learning about um, theories of therapy. But my own experience had been that when I went to this therapist, she actually wasn't the one that I thought I was
Mm,
supposed to see. It was, I had contacted a therapist that had been recommended to me. He was a psychologist. And I ended up, when I went in, meeting with his wife, who was a clinical social worker. And she started asking me questions, but she was asking me questions about my family and my dating relationships and how long I had ever been in a relationship and whether I was married. It had nothing to do with the trauma that I'd had, and I started feeling really judged by her. And I asked her, I asked her if she was the doctor that I had contacted because her voice was very deep. I think she was a smoker. And she said, no, I'm his wife. I thought that you should see a woman because of the nature of why you're here. So that didn't sit well with me to begin with. But then I went back to see her again, and she started with a lot of questions that felt very judgmental to me. And I talked to some people who had been in therapy and understanding this was a long time ago too. And they said, you should feel better talking to somebody, not worse. So I just stopped.
yeah.
But that was the only experience I'd had of therapy. And so I was really nervous about it when I first went.
Yeah, that's the thing about therapists, right? There are people as well, and they might have a completely different personality than you do, or they might judge you. I don't know. Like it's like any profession as well. There's
Yeah.
good people and there's bad people at that profession. You know, like
Yes.
so if one doesn't work out, doesn't mean that they all won't work out. You just need to maybe try a different one, and that's yeah.
Exactly. And the difficulty in being in that situation, and especially people who are struggling with depression is, and depression, the PTSD symptoms hit first. And I'll talk a little bit about what that is so people understand. But just about everybody has traumatic things that happen to them. You know, you can have drama in your life, and then you can have things that are really traumatic. Um, Accidents, somebody dies, you almost die. And a lot of people process that well. Like they talk about it, they put a story to the uncomfortable symptoms, and they deal with it. Some people, not the majority, but quite a few people will do what I did. They will just bury all of those feelings and
Mm,
move on with life and say, I'm tough, I can tough this out. Um, and it so the kind of symptoms that I had that are the kind of symptoms that let you know it's not just you're feeling bad about a trauma is really intrusive kind of feelings. Like for me, people will have flashbacks and nightmares. I had nightmares for 20 years. I felt like people were chasing me. I felt like there were ghosts in my house that were out to get me. um, And it was very much, when I think about it now, I didn't realize it at the time, but when I think about it now, it was very much like the situation I woke up in, which was I woke up in my familiar house, but it was all dark and there was a dark shadow of a figure there. And I had that nightmare for years, but it was just like going through a house that I wasn't sure about, but it felt familiar. And I also had the experience of intrusive feelings where I felt like somebody was crawling on me and I couldn't, and that would just happen. I was at the grocery store and it started happening, and I couldn't stop it. So that's one. And then avoidance. I would avoid anything that would remind me of the situation. Um, and a lot of negative thinking. I really beat myself up. I distorted a lot of the ways that I thought about things and really worked hard to stay in control of everything and everyone in my life. And um, the last thing were just really weird somatic symptoms. Like um, I felt like bugs were crawling on my back a lot, or bugs were right behind me. And I finally,
Oh
about
my
six
gosh.
months well, I finally, about 6 months into therapy, it felt like they were right behind me. Like I would have this very creepy feeling in my back. And about 6 months into therapy, all of a sudden, there was an aha moment of what that feeling was. And I don't know if you'll understand this, but it's like people call it the heebie jeebies. And what I realized it was we used to sit around the campfire when I was young and tell ghost stories. And have you ever had that experience sitting around with people in the dark and telling ghost stories?
Yeah, yeah, it's scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's scary. And you don't want, okay, so you don't want to look over your shoulder because then people will laugh at you because they know that you're looking over your shoulder because you've got that creepy feeling in your back that somebody's back there, right? That's the feeling I had. And I realized that that feeling is dread. And that was the first time I realized that I had had that feeling of dread when I woke up. And so so that was the heebie-jeebies feeling that I was feeling. So all of those symptoms are symptoms of PTSD. The intrusive feelings and the negative thoughts and the flashbacks and those weird sensations. Um, So I was having them all and I needed to deal with it. So, and then you were talking about different kind of people. Therapists are all different people. And one of the biggest predictors of of healing and therapy, of sticking with it and healing, is your feeling of connection with the therapist that you're talking with. So that accounts for like 40% of how people what's attributed to healing is you're having someone that you connect with, that you trust and feel safe with, that you can talk with. So I found a therapist like that. And um, in the book, the entire middle section of the book is about the therapy and it's about what it's like to be in therapy. But I start by talking about all of the obstacles you throw up to that you have to overcome to actually even get into therapy. So things like, how am I going to pay for it? How am I going to fit it in? What happens if this person is the wrong person? Everything in my mind is so chaotic. I have no idea what to talk about. That's really typical with people who are depressed, that things just become very muddied in your mind and you don't know how you're ever going to talk about it. And so I wrote about those obstacles that we throw up for ourselves, worrying about what other people might say if they find out that you're in therapy. It's a lot of judgment that you put on yourself, a lot of myths, and I kind of um, I problem solve all of those issues. And the bottom line is that when you are talking to the right person, you won't have to keep restating your story because you're going to be talking about the right things very quickly. So if you're in therapy and you're not feeling like you're connecting with this person, then you need to do some more research. And one of the documents that I've put out is kind of how to look for therapists. Um, but yeah, it talks about that, and then just the experience of starting to pursue and be in therapy and what was going on in my mind and the things that I did to to help myself keep going. Um, I did a lot of writing. I journaled all the time, which was great when I wrote the books because when I wrote the book, I was able to go back and revisit those journals, and they were the first place that I was actually able to be honest with myself, to pull out to pull out things that I was thinking about but wasn't yet talking about. And my therapist was great. Um, he did not direct the therapy at all. So the first therapist that I went to back when it happened asked a lot of questions, was very directive, and just and led what we talked about. And in especially with sexual trauma and with PTSD, it's really important for the patient or the client to be in total control. You don't talk about stuff until you're ready to talk about it and you decide you want to talk about it. And so he was not only good at making me take the lead about what we would talk about, but he really directed me that that's what I needed to do and gave me a lot of safety in doing that. And we had discussions about trust because I finally realized that I had a real difficult time trusting, and um, I had to work through that. But there were a lot of discussions. There's a lot of dialogue between my therapist and me in the book, and then a lot of my thinking, not only about stuff that we talked about, but the stuff I wasn't ready to talk about yet. And one of the things that I've realized when people talk to me about the book is that self-talk, the things that we say to ourselves that we don't say to anybody else, is really common, especially among accomplished people who are um, who feel like they can handle everything. And so a lot of stuff goes on in their minds that they